Okay, this is our daily study of Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, for those who have yahrzeit for tonight, the 22nd of Iyar. Mary Caviar, Ethel Flapin, Sari Friedman, Sadie Gallus, Rose Hoffman, Kenneth Klugman, Sherman Radetsky, and Barney Snitz. May their memory be for a blessing. As always, a link to the text of the Mishnah will be in the first comment below. We are up to chapter 2, Mishnah 9. Amar Lahem, in the statements of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he said to his 5 great students, of whom he said in the previous Mishnah that Rabbi Elazar ben Arach is the greatest, and we'll see that carries through to this Mishnah. Go forth and see what is the right path to which a man should adhere. He asked them all, what's the best path in life what's the most important character trait, basically, that a person should have? He was quizzing them. What do you say? Rabbi Eliezer Omer Ayin Tova. Rabbi Eliezer said you have to have a good eye. What that means is, optimism. You see the world, you see everything, your perspective. That's what it means. A good perspective. You see everything in a positive light. That's the most important character trait. Rabbi Yoshua Omer Chaver Tov. You have to be a good friend. The commentaries dispute this here. Does he mean you have to be a good friend or to have a good friend? It probably means the most important character trait is that you yourself should be a good friend. That'll prove that you're an all-around good person. Rabbi Yossi Omer Shachen Tov. This is interesting. Rabbi Yossi says it's more important to be a good neighbor. And what he seems to mean is, anyone can be a good friend to someone they like, but their next door neighbor who you don't even know, you don't really care about necessarily, you're not friends. But are you respectful to that person too, right? That's why we usually translate the verse in the Torah, Yahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, is the classic translation. Everyone's going to love their friend, but do you love the coworker, the person you don't necessarily care about? How do you treat them? So that's what Rabbi Yossi seems to be saying. Rabbi Shimon Omer Haroa es hanolad. The most important character trait is, can you see the outcome of a deed? Do you perceive with wisdom what the outcome of something will be? You're not impulsive. You don't just act on instant gratification. Rabbi Elazar Omer, and here this is confusing. There's a Rabbi Eliezer and a Rabbi Elazar. The first one is Eliezer. The last one is Elazar. And we'll see that Elazar is the top student. Rabbi Elazar Omer Lev Tov. It's the most important thing is to have a good heart. Amar lahem roa ani es divrei Rabbi Elazar ben Arach shebechlal divarav divreichem. And their Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, I prefer the words of that last Rabbi Elazar, the words of Elazar ben Arach. He is correct because a good heart is all inclusive of all the things that you said. If you have a good heart, which means a good character, you will also have a good perspective. You'll be a good friend. You'll be a good neighbor. You'll be able to perceive the outcome of your deeds and how it affects people. Okay, so he said Rabbi Elazar ben Arach wins that quiz. Amr lahem, similarly, he said, Su'ru ezohi derech ra sheyisrachik mimena ha'adam. He said, now tell me what's a bad character trait that someone has to distance themselves from? What's the most important trait to have? Now what's the most important trait not to have? Not surprisingly, they really just give the inverse of what they said. Rabbi Eliezer Omer ayin ra'ah. It's not necessarily obvious, right? But that's what they do. Rabbi Eliezer had said good perspective, so he said the worst trait you could have is a bad perspective, right? We all know people like this who are miserable about everything. This stinks, the food is bad, everything's bad, always complaining. So a bad perspective is the worst character trait. Rabbi Yoshua Omer Chavera. Rabbi Yoshua says to be a bad friend, that's the most revealing about your character. And once again, he could mean to have a bad friend is the worst thing you could have, but it probably means to be a bad friend. Rabbi Yossi Omer Shachen Ra. If you're a bad neighbor, that testifies about your character. If your neighbors say, oh, we can't stand that guy, he's so inconsiderate, he leaves his trash out for a long time, or he plays the music too loud. That came up in New York. You live in apartments, whatever. If you're a bad neighbor, that testifies to your character. Rabbi Shimon Omer halova ve'eno mishalim, and this is sort of random. The worst character trait you could have is to borrow money and not pay back. That is an inverse of the example in the previous statement. He said, "What's a good character trait? Haroas hanolad, someone who sees the outcome of his deed." So here in the inverse, he's given an example of someone who doesn't consider the outcome of his deeds, but he decides to give a concrete example. You borrow money, you didn't even consider how am I going to pay this back. So that's someone who doesn't consider the outcomes of his deeds, and that's the worst character trait you could have. Right? It's not like you fall on hard times and you just couldn't pay it back through no fault of your own. It's like you borrow $100,000 from a loan shark. That's what I see this as, and there's no way you're going to pay it back, but you're impulsive and you don't care. Okay. And he says, Echad halova min ha'adam kalova min ha'makom baruchu. Whether you borrow from a person, whoever borrows from a person, it's as if you're borrowing from God. Shenemar, it says in Psalms, Lo ve'rasha v'lo yishalim b'tzadik chonein v'nosein. This is a homiletic interpretation. So what does it mean? The wicked borrows and repays not, but the righteous deals graciously and gives. It's saying the righteous is gonna give back, but it also could mean the righteous lends regardless of if the person needs it, if he knows the person's not going to pay back. But for homiletic purposes, so it's contrasting two different kinds of people. For homiletic purposes, that Sadiq, the righteous one, is referring to God in his interpretation. And what it means is, if you're wicked and you don't pay someone back, now God is going to have to pay that person back to enact justice in the world because that person is owed money. So God is going to have to reach into his pocket, whatever that means metaphorically. You owe this guy $100, you're not paying him. Now I have to do something nice for him in life so that to make up for your sin. So now it's like you're stealing from God because you're forcing God to pay this guy back. Very interesting homiletic interpretation. Okay. Now Rabbi Elazar Omer Levra. Rabbi Elazar, the same Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, says no, a bad heart is the worst thing. He had said a good heart is the best thing you could have. Bad heart is the worst thing you could have. Amar lahem roa nias divrei Rabbi Elazar ben Arach shebechlal devarav divreichen. And so too, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, I prefer the words of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach that a bad heart is the worst thing you could have, because that leads to all the other things. It will lead to you being a bad friend, a bad neighbor, to borrowing money and not paying it back, and to having a bad perspective in life. Okay, pretty straightforward. So, with that, we'd usually make a Mishaberach L'cholim for those who are ill before Shabbos, but I didn't get any names this week. But if you have any name of anyone you'd want me to include in future weeks or in future videos, please just let me know their name, preferably in Hebrew with their mother's Hebrew name. But if not, I always say God understands English names also. And that's how we have our yard sites recorded too, just the English. But there too, if you know the Hebrew name, I'll include it. So being Erev Shabbos, we don't say the Malay, but we say the other prayer following the study of Mishnah. Ana Adonai Malay Rachamim, Asher biyadcha nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol basar ish. Yen al ratzon lefanecha toraseinu tfiloseinu, v'avor nishmos kol haskaros shel halayla, ugmolna imhem b'chastecha agadol liftoch lehem shari rachamim b'chesed, shari gan eden uskabelosam ba'avo v'chiba ushlach lehem malachecha kedoshim atahorim lo licham ulo shivam tachas etzachayin. Eitzel nishmos hatzadikim batzidkanios chasidim v'chasidos lehenos miziv shchinascha, lehaspia mituvcha hatzafun hatzadikim. Aguf yanuach bekever b'menucha nechono b'chedva v'simcha b'shalom k'dechsiv yavo shalom yanucho mishkavasam holech nechocho u'chsiv yalzu chasidim b'chavod yiranro mishkosam u'chsiv im tishkav lo sivchad v'shachavta v'yorva shnasecha. And in English, please, O Hashem, full of mercy, for in your hand is the soul of all the living and the spirit of every human being. May you find favor in our Torah study and prayer. For the souls of Mary Caviar, Ethel Flapin, Sari Friedman, Sadie Gallus, Rose Hoffman, Kenneth Klugman, Sherman Radetsky, Barney Snitz, in whose memory we study and pray. Accept them with love and affection, and send them your holy and pure angels to lead to settle into the tree of life, near the souls of the righteous and devout, to enjoy the radiance of your presence. To satiate them from your good that is concealed for the righteous. May their body repose in the grave with proper contentment, pleasure, gladness, and peace. As it is written, let him enter in peace, let them rest on their beds, everyone who has lived in his proper way. As it is written, let the devout exult in glory, let them sing joyously upon their beds. As it is written, if you lay down, you will not fear. When you lay down, your sleep will be sweet. Amen.